Doodly doo doo doo. Hello everybody, welcome to Xucaboa 100% Vanilla Baby, episode number 20. As you see, I have 0 of my 54 mods enabled, and we'll load our last game here. As always, I'd like to say thank you, gracias, obrigado, to new supporters of the channel. Here we have Suzanne, Spook Hitchinson, and Pebbles and Luna. All episodes of Xucaboa 100% Vanilla Baby have edited subtitles in English, Spanish, and Portuguese, and random photos of Xuca. Here's one of her having a snooze. So let's take a look at what we did last episode. The big project was just to work on this small section of the city to make it look like a, I guess, 19th, 20th century old waterfront. Very brick themed building style going on here. A lot of docks, a lot of piers. And really it just took a lot of choosing the right assets, letting them grow in place and making sure we didn't have anything too modern looking. Did a little bit of zoning to make it European for the industrial assets. Just outside we put the bird and bee haven, and we put the big greenhouse there for Hushan. So that's really what it came down to. A little bit of micro zoning and district stuff, making it a European district. I'm gonna turn on the cemeteries real fast before I forget. They were in the middle of emptying. We have to be mindful that until we unlock crematoriums, we need to keep adding cemeteries as the population ages. Something I forgot to do in the past, quite a long time ago. I've had high density. I never adjusted the taxes. So we're going to put that up to 12%, which is kind of the magic number. Now, this episode is going to be a little bit shorter and a little bit slower than the ones I've put out recently, because in the last episode, I built those finger piers using roads, and I got a lot of good feedback from people. And some of that feedback was also asking me just how I did it, if I could do it a little bit slower, and kind of show the technique. And that's what I plan on doing right now. So I put in the boat museum, unique building, right there, a little maritime museum. It's also in a brick building, has an old paddle wheel ferry. And I'm just going to reconnect the road here before I get started on, I guess it'll be a tutorial kind of on how to do these piers, because I want to add a few more as well on the other side of the bridge. So just making sure our tram connection is looking good again now that we did a little bit of editing with the roads. And I think that's all I'm going to do here for now anyway. First the piers, and then we'll get into a little bit of other stuff after. You see this maritime museum has that block on the dock. Really something that drives me nuts, but I can't really fix it. So in vanilla, we're just gonna have to live with that sort of thing. The water's edge is a very, very picky area in vanilla. You can't just get everything perfect every time. Every now and then I can, but I've never been able to replicate my successes consistently. So I'll show you what I can do right now. If anyone knows any better, please say so in the comments if there's a way to be consistent at the water's edge. But this is pretty close. So to the tutorial now, you see I've created this basin, and I just used the flattened terrain to draw this perimeter around the tub, and I'm just lowering inside down just a little bit. That isn't always necessary, but it can help. And it also lets the water, when you unpause the simulation, it lets the water kind of fall in instead of go ashore right away. It's still going to flood a lot, but it does reduce it just a little bit. I'm going to delete the ferry tracks I had put in just to make room, because you can't build on top of the ferry lines, and I might be coming close to that. I'll also get rid of this fishing track as well for the same reason. And we'll redraw those in once we're done with our work here. So you have to unpause the simulation after you've drawn your dewatering area, and then place dewatering pumps as soon as you're able. You have to let the water sort itself out first. And connect it into the main infrastructure. Although actually it doesn't have to be in the main infrastructure, but since mine is so close, we'll do that. If you do in the main infrastructure, for me, because I have the canal district on the other side of town, it seems to flood when I add new water sources. unless I add a fresh water outlet to let the excess water go. Otherwise the pump over there doesn't perform as well, and then the water level gets high over on that side of town. So you see some flooding came all across our new district, but because we have almost no residential in this area, it should not be a big deal. You won't see a death wave like what would happen if I flooded a residential zone. If it's just commercial, if it's just industrial, not a big deal. Just going to speed up a tiny bit right here because it takes a while for the water to get sucked out, the level to go down. And it'll be good too because the sun comes up and we can see a little bit better what we're doing. Just going to make the edge very, very flat right along the key. And we will begin. Now you see what I did last time. I did these two piers and I was kind of thinking they'd be like park piers. Like you see in New York City, a lot of the old piers get converted into parks. But I didn't really like it. After I was finished with the episode, I was happy with how they turned out. They came out well, but I thought it would be better to have a more industrial old look. So I'm going to go with an industrial road on this pier. Not the 2-lane, or not the 4-lane one here because there's this big hole in it, which doesn't really make sense. But if I just do it like that, I think it actually looks pretty good. And on the other one, we'll do a gravel road, which turns into a wooden bridge, which looks like a wooden dock. A lot like the one I used to work on, as a matter of fact, in Manhattan. I worked at Pier 16, which is a wooden pier. So we will use the gravel road here, and we're connecting right into a node already. I've turned on angle snapping only. All the rest of the snappings are off. I have my elevation step at its lowest. So this way when I hit page up or page down, I'm not sure which button it is on console, but the idea is the same, you know, whatever makes it go up or down. Then it will adjust a little bit more finely. And the same can be done with walking paths. Matter of fact, there's a bigger variety of styles you can do with walking paths for this same purpose. You need to start a little bit away from the pier's edge, lift the path, this is true for paths or roads, lift it up just a tiny bit above the pier so that it goes up. You see it's got that angle. Now here, with the roads don't do this, but the walking paths do. They have a maximum height, and the maximum height here is still too low. So I'm just going to raise up the terrain a bit so that way I can draw it out and not have it dip down too low into the water. But you always have to have that little bit of an angle, otherwise you get problems. Every now and then you can get it so it looks like totally flush with the key, but then you might actually run into some flooding. Now you see here, some paths, like that new European path, they're a little bit too wide to adjust both sides, but you can really change the style of walking path pier by choosing any one of the Parks Life paths, or the concrete path, or the gravel path, for very different looks, and some of them are really cool. I'm going to choose ones that have a more industrial feel because of the nature of this waterfront, but you can see this one here would be cool in a really rural lake or something like that, or a swampy area. So you have a lot of different options with these. I think they're some of the best looking assets you could actually put on the water, to be honest, are these walking paths. But you do need a tiny, more than one cell, it looks like, because when I tried to do it on one cell, it was too tight. It wouldn't let me go across the key. And then you just have it so it comes. You want that first node to be right by the key, so this way you can change. You can leave the part that you've dragged out and then connect it to the shore again if you want to change things up in the future. Now here with the walking paths, they're a little bit finer with the elevation step. So this one, it wasn't going quite level if I went between page up and page down. So I just dropped the terrain a meter or two, and now it looks like it's level when I put it in. So all of this, you know, each pier is going to take a little bit of play to get it right. Now, if you look at the new content creator piers, this one is the Rhine River pier, I believe. It's just a straight finger pier, kind of like what we did, but it's really quite small and fine. And this Seine River one, Seine River goes through Paris. The Rhine River goes from the Netherlands into Switzerland on the border of France and Germany. The The Seine River one that bends is I really like it, except it doesn't float at the bottom. You see how it goes up from the quay and then it goes down, and then it has those big pilings on each side. Those are to let the bottom part of the dock float up and down with the tide, and the gangway going from the upper part to the lower part will articulate. It will move up and down with the floating dock. That's why it's elevated above. And I've worked on plenty of docks that are like that, have that capability. It's a shame they didn't make it so that it actually floats, but that's all right. It still looks pretty good. I like it better than the Rhine one. I think the Rhine maybe could fit in some places, but I haven't really imagined a good spot for that yet. So here I just have the gravel paths that are making the wooden walking path piers here. They're just skinnier piers. I put in a Rhine one in the middle just for comparison. And over there, instead of using the walking paths, I use a road. I use the gravel road, which makes a wooden bridge. And, I think they add a serious element of realism to a waterfront to have piers like this. Not every waterfront should have piers like this or needs piers like this, but when you have a waterfront that it fits right, that's what you want. And I actually think for variety, I'm going to go back to having a concrete industrial street pier over here. And you'll see too, I remember when I did this, it looked good, and then when I finished it off, it was too high. So you see just how high it goes above the quay. When I finish the road, it doesn't look quite right. But what I'll do is I try to adjust the length of this ramp up to it. And when I do it on what I think is the best curve that I can, the best angle or tangent or whatever you want to call it, then it looks quite abrupt. And I don't like that. I think it's close, but it's not quite good enough. And you even see that blue terrain clipping under the road. That means the road is a little bit too close to the quay. Because again, like I said, the water's edge is a very finicky place for the game to understand the mechanics that it has for itself. There's a lot of glitching, a lot of clipping, a lot of terrain issues. So it's just something you have to play with. Each time I've had some go really easy and some take a lot of playing around with to get right. So don't be discouraged if it's not working out quite right. You just got to play around with it. And ultimately, there have even been some points where I'm just like, you know what, forget it. I'm not going to put something here because it's not working, no matter what I do. But this one here, I think that's a better, it's just a little bit lower and I think it looks better. Now along the, I guess in between the road and the quay, I'm going to just use concrete paths, simple concrete paths to decorate. This is just for detailing. It's not to add any walkability function to this area. It's just, it seems strange that there'd be soil in between the street and that quay. It should just be a concrete thing. The one thing I don't like about it is that there are lampposts and not necessarily where I'd want them, but it's not that big of a deal. If you play with mods, this is a spot where I would use the surface painter mod for sure, just to grab the concrete painter and paint that whole area in, and it would be fine. I love that mod because it's great for detailing. But since I don't have any mods, I'll just do it this way, which is, you know, it works. It's not the worst. I've worked in a lot of ships and boats, and painting is something we do every day, pretty much. And there are different qualities of paint jobs, all right? And a lot of times we'll say this is like a 2-meter paint job or a 10-meter paint job, meaning that it has to look good from that far away. It doesn't, you know, here we're gonna call this a 10-meter paint job. When you go further away, you can't even tell. It looks like one solid concrete strip. But when you are really close up, you can see that it's not that perfect. That's all right, we'll live with that. Now I've deleted the basin, I've gotten rid of the pumps, and I'm gonna let the simulation run, and you see this gigantic wave of water will rush in to fill that void that we had, sucking the water from all parts of this bay, of this inlet, and causing some flooding. But it should just be a single wave. But because of the shape of this body of water, I think it actually takes a little bit more time to sort itself out because the wave will go back and forth and splash and splash. It's like doing a cannonball in a bathtub or something, right? It's going to make not just one wave, but it's going to bounce back and forth and back and forth. So just reconnecting the fishing and ferry lines to make sure that they're not going to run into each other, or the piers, or the anything, and that they look natural and good. You see, if there was residential buildings in this area, it would be a disaster because the water's sticking around quite some time. When you get the flood icon looking red, I think that's when people start dying. So here it's kind of flat, and the water just has to, you know, eventually either evaporate or make its way back into the bay. And that's why you want to make sure not to do this when you have a dense residential neighborhood. That's really the only advice I can say for wave management. It's just something you got to live with. Now, what I'm going to do next, I'm going to actually time-lapse a little bit. I was thinking about filling in some of these gaps with zoned buildings. After my last episode, I was playing around to see what else I could do, what else would look good, and I thought that maybe some of these European offices actually do fit in quite well with the I don't know, the ambiance of what I'm doing here, with the district theme. So I put in a few of those here. I'm trying to put in an industrial spot because it's still European, so it should be a European industry, but those ones are get mixed in with the normal industry too. It's not guaranteed you'll get a European industry asset every time. And of course, when I did my practice run, I got a great European asset, and then I waited a long time and eventually I got a regular asset. But I think it looked good behind the bakery because it has those big tanks when you look over again and see that. Now, this is something I'd totally forgotten about, is that we have unique buildings. I really have not been thinking too much about them, except, you know, in the last episode is when I really started. Because I'm used to playing with custom assets, and so these buildings aren't that unique for me. But here I'm going to put in the clock tower, which I think is a beautiful asset. We'll call it the Pebbles and Luna clock tower. Pebbles and Luna are the cats of Hushan. Here's a photo I received of them, and they are lovely looking cats, sisters. And I'm just happy to have cat stuff in there. I thought it would be a little bit too impressive to name that clock tower after someone specifically, but I will name the Maritime Museum after Suzanne. So that's the Suzanne S.H. Maritime Museum. And believe me, that is a special thing for me too, because I worked at a maritime museum for 3 years. That's where I was working at the docks in New York. So I wish that Maritime Museum was a little bit different, but it's all right. It's got that cool paddle wheel ferry. I'm really thinking it's appropriate by the ferry depot, you know, the history of the ferries of this inlet or something like that. And now we'll just time-lapse some detailing work I'm doing real fast, filling in gaps, putting in those park tiles all around the clock tower, putting in some paths, concrete or dirt paths. Gonna add some chess tables and things like that. Really just standard issue detailing, as I like to call it. I'm trying not to go with too much vegetation in this neighborhood because it's a very industrial neighborhood. Wouldn't make sense for there to be too many trees, but I'll add a couple of things here. Like we have these hedges. I'm kind of almost stitching the borders of this plaza or this largo or whatever you want to call it. This big square, although it's not a square, it's a triangle. This big triangle with the clock tower. And I added a couple flower beds in there. So I think it's looking pretty good. That is kind of the pièce de résistance of this neighborhood, that huge clock tower, the Pebbles and Luna clock tower. So I'm happy to have it. They're just finishing with some zoning, a couple more things, a little bit more detailing, just looking around. I didn't do too much of that last episode, but we're really not going to leave the neighborhood we worked in last time. We're just kind of finishing it off before we move on. Our population has gone above 10,000, which is pretty cool. If you take a look at the piers we did, See the difference between different styles? You could really get quite a variety using different roads and walking paths when making your piers. And if you have the new content creator pack, you can get those extra ones too. I think this waterfront looks pretty cool, and I hope you all do too. This has been Xucaboa 100% Vanilla Baby, episode number 20, and I will see you next time.